I this morning want to try to take you to a place, and I want to try to take you back a little bit. We've all been there over the last several months. We have gone through a lot of things that have happened, not only in our church but in the world. And one of the reasons why we did this series, Re-Engage, was we believed that we were at a point where people are starting to return back to church pretty regularly now. You're here. Thank you for coming. You're watching. Thank you for watching. And so as we think about this and we consider all that's a part of who we are and what we do as a church, we have kind of narrowed it down to say, we want to do what we can to engage more people than we ever have before. And the whole idea was not to engage people just to get a lot of people in the room. That really, I think, can be very empty to somebody's faith. I mean, isn't it true if you come week after week and you sit in the chair and that's the only connection you have to the church? You don't really, what happens if you can't come for 1 week? Or what happens if something disconnects you? And it's like, I don't have that anymore. And the strength of maybe what you were counting on for your faith to grow, which is attending a service perhaps, has kind of fallen off, or it's impossible for you to do, or something's happened. And so for us, we wanted to say, it's not about gaining lots of people. It's about the people that are a part of who we are, and we hope there's new people on a regular basis. But we look at it and say, how can we engage people? How can we actually get you involved? And so we've been talking about some of that. I started the first week talking all about why we would do it in the first place. All right? And we're actually going to go back to the verse here in a minute of where that came from. But then on top of that, we're looking at specifically the things that really make us who we are, and how we actually measure somebody being able to be involved. And you could actually look at yourself and say, am I really engaged? Am I really a part of this? And so I look at it from a standpoint, and I take you back in our history about a year and a half or so, when on March the 13th or so, we heard from a lot of government officials, people like that everything was shutting down out there, and we were left with kind of a decision of what to do as a church. And it led to not only shutting down for 1 week, which I thought, okay, we can shut down one Sunday and kind of, that get our bearings about what's going on. And then 4 months later, on August the 2nd, we actually came back. So to be out that long, and then when we came back, we looked at the people who had returned, and quite honestly, there was so much word out there and unknowns about the COVID virus and what it really was and all of that many people were quite fearful about being in large rooms and lots of people. And so we could talk about that all day, because I know that if I were to ask certain questions here today and I took a quiz, there'd be hands this way and hands this way, and it'd be hard to get everybody on the same page about the whole thing. Am I right? Is the church is not about a building. And so if that was really the truth, we say the church is really us. We're the church, the people. But when we go back and we start to look at churches at large, and we look at our communities and all of the organizations and everything, I wanted to share a few points with you that is really, it's obvious that it's going on and it's difficult. Number one, volunteerism is down. It's down across the board. In a lot of organizations, it's hard to get people to do it. Many times people, at least out in the culture and in the communities, people will volunteer one time, or they'll come to do one thing. Like volunteer to come and bring food to a food pantry, or maybe come and give blood, or they'll do certain things like that. Maybe help a neighbor out with a situation. But when we're talking long term and getting involved, this time away and this time of disconnection kind of has caused that to happen within a lot of ranks. And so many organizations, including churches, are seeing this, that volunteerism is down. And there's lots of ways to say why it happened or whatever. You maybe know, I could come up with what I think happened, but I can tell you this was a huge disruption to life. No matter where you stood on wearing a mask, the vaccine, whether you thought the COVID was a hoax or it wasn't, and quite honestly, anybody in this room that had COVID, it wasn't a hoax, all right? And because it hit me, I got sick, and I was sick, all right? There's no doubt about it. 3 weeks I was down. I rode a roller coaster. So I think we all could admit, yeah, there's a sickness, there's a virus, a form of flu that's going around. That's not the point. I'm not here to say one way or the other or how we should come across or how we should stand. I'm telling you that this is a reality right here because of what happened. And not only that, but values have been rearranged. People's values have been rearranged based on the time that they have at their access. Working from home. How many of you had to work from home over the time period, some portion of time? How many of you had to work from home? Raise your hand. That's a large portion of people in this room. And so it's not, I don't know about you, but working from home is not my kind of gig, all right? When I'm at home, I want to be home. You know, I want to be on the couch. I want to be watching football. Of course, during that period of time, wasn't a lot of football, but you get my point, right? You want to be, home is home. And so it can really be difficult. And I'll just tell you something. I admire those of you who were working from home before the pandemic and having to learn how to do that through that process and continue to do it. But for those of us who are people, you know, my wife was like, oh, great, lockdown, no see people, perfect, you know. That was her personality, whereas a lot of you probably are like that. It's like, wow, this is great. I've been social distancing most of my life. And so, you know, but this has become part of it. Values have been rearranged. But on top of that, I think that it has caused, and I'm not saying this about us necessarily, but you can make the judgment call on this. I believe that people are focused on self. I think we begin to be more focused about our needs, our wants, our desires, and that changes your whole mentality about whether you're going to serve other people or volunteer. And think about what that does to the church, okay? Think about what that does to the church. And I heard this stated, that crisis is not only an accelerator, but it is a revealer. And it's really true. It's not only an accelerator, so think about it. Things that we're experiencing now would normally have taken about 10 years, but the fact of the lockdown, all this stuff, it accelerated culture and the things we're experiencing, it accelerated it 10 times what it was. And so now, here we are faced with that and looking at it, but it also has revealed some things that we thought we were strong at, and now it's like, oops, maybe we weren't as strong as we thought. Now, I got to say this. From the beginning, I was so excited and thankful and proud to be part of this church because you guys, as soon as we hit lockdown, we started saying, okay, what can we do to help? What can we do in this community? A lot of people started stepping up. It happened. I mean, it was incredible to see the response. But as the time went on, it was more difficult and more difficult and more difficult for us to get as many people involved in doing those things. And actually, even organizations, when we did Be Rich last year, we had serving projects we wanted to offer, but many of us, and even nonprofit organizations that we would go out and serve, they weren't willing to have us. Why? Because COVID was going on and they didn't want to make their serving event a super spreader. And so it really made us all be focused on self. I mean, let's just face it. And so I asked the question, if that's the way culture is and those things are happening, why should we be any different? Why would the church be any different? Why would we respond any different than the way any organization or any group or any person is? And I want to tell you, I believe there is a reason why we would respond differently. There's a definite reason why we would be different. So in a very few minutes this morning, I'm going to take you through some very straightforward reasons why we believe that the church ought to be the greatest example during times of crisis. It should reveal who it is we really are serving and who it is at the base and foundation of everything we do. So I want to take you back, and I just give you a perspective here. I read a book here recently that John Maxwell wrote. I don't know if you know who John Maxwell is, and I love his stuff on leadership. And one of the things that he wrote is that whenever you have a group of people, so we could probably look at this church as an example, You have 25% of people who are like, woohoo, I am all in. Whatever happens, I'm in it. I'm there early and I stay late. I'm going to make sure I do everything. I give 110%. I want to be, I'm all in. And I can see evidence of that. I see evidence of that. And then there's 25% of people that are like, I don't really care what goes on. I had to push myself to get here in the first place. I know they need things, but I'm not going to do it. And that's kind of how he describes it. Kind of somebody who's down and has a hard time fighting through. It's just reality. All right. Any group of people. Look at our country. It's like that. And then there's 50% of the people that are right in the middle, and they're riding the fence. They want to, but they don't know how, but then things pull them back, and they back and forth, and they're not quite all in. At times they are, but then they come back, and they don't want to do, and that's just reality. Quite honestly, I believe that COVID revealed those percentages in our general population and within churches. Okay? Our church is not the only one. Matter of fact, I talk to lead pastors all the time, and I talked to one recently, and he is so discouraged by the response of people in his church to just come to services. And I have tried, and I told him I didn't want to say, wow, we're not really experiencing that much here. I'm thankful and blessed to be on this team and to be one of the pastors here and to watch you guys responding the way you are. I want to make sure that we know why we do what we do. I want to make sure that we don't let things that are happening outside draw or pull us back. I want to try to pull you away from being that bottom 25% if you find yourself there, because you're never going to experience Jesus the way that you could if you were 100% in and all in. And especially those of you who are on the fence, my goal in life, and I've made it my venture, is to run down the fence line shoving people off. Okay? So I'm here to shove you off the fence today, however it is. So I want to take you to some passages of Scripture that just remind us of why this is so important. In 2 Corinthians, I go there because Paul is writing, and his writing here is all about reconciliation and how much it is a part of it. You've heard verses like this read, but this one was one that I talked about early in this series. As a matter of fact, it was the reason why you should even consider being a part of this church and what we do, because this is why we do what we do. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14 says this: "For Christ's love compels us because we are convinced that one died for all." I want to stop there for just a minute and remind you that something compelling means it's the reason, it's what's behind it, it's the motivation, it's the push. It's what tells you that it's true. It's what gives you the faith to believe it. Do we believe, and I ask this of all of you here, and some of you in this room, you're just considering whether this is true or not, but that's okay. We would rather you be here being skeptical and considering it and walking with us, because a lot of us in this room have found it to be true that Jesus Christ did die for all. And He died so that our sin would be taken care of and that we would be given a hope and a life and a faith to live our everyday lives with, that would give us passion, that would pull us out of being a part of the bottom 25% that John Maxwell talked about, that would shove us off the fence and make us realize that God is worth serving because He loved us so much He would send His Son Jesus to die for us. Wow! I mean, I don't know about you, but that fires me up. Can you tell? And I'll tell you what, I know that a lot of times, people say, boy, that was a great message, Greg. You're very passionate. And I'll just say this. I don't want anything I do up here to be fake, because Jesus did not fake it. And I wouldn't want my heart or anything that I do or any of the parts, anything that I ask here, any of us as leaders in this church, I wouldn't want us to ask unless it was real in our heart. And the day it stops being real in my heart, I will walk away from being the leader. I would not want it to do that. Now, that's not a proud thing. That's a please hold me accountable thing. Okay? We go on in the verses. I gotta keep going. All right. And he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again. I hope we understand the seriousness of this and what this really means. When you live for yourself, you're going to find your life is empty. Anybody here been there? Anybody here give a little shout and a testimony? You needed those chains broke in your life of serving yourself for so long, and it's just like it was useless. You ever feel like you get up in a day and it's just like, is this life even worth it? Can I tell you what? This life is worth it. Why? Because we don't serve ourselves. We no longer live for ourselves. We live for the one who died. This verse is everything to us. You get that, right? This is everything. We have no reason to even come to church if this verse is not true. There's no reason to get up out of bed on a regular day when it's rainy and everything. It's hard to fight through to do anything. Parents, grandparents, to invest in your kids and grandkids, to work a job and to be around people that maybe you don't care for, you don't like, whatever. Any of those situations, circumstances, this makes it all worth it. Because we don't live for ourselves. We live for somebody who died for us and rose again. See, listen to this statement. I heard this stated here recently. When you die to yourself, something greater rises. When you die to yourself, something greater rises. And I know that's true. Why? Because of this. That's what compels us. His love for us, to die for us, is what compels us. It's the reason. That's why I would even stand up here and say to you, listen, if you want to really see your faith grow and you really want to be engaged with God, then you got to remember this. Another verse that is clear, and this is what Jesus said about himself. In Mark chapter 10, verse 45, he says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many." Jesus could have come here and he could have taken over. He could have performed unbelievable miracles. Not that the ones that he did were not unbelievable. But he could have done some things where he could have taken over and finally been the ruler and set everything straight. He could have done that. But there was one matter of business that he had not taken care of, and that was to come here and be a servant. And in the role of a servant, he died. He didn't come here to get acknowledged. He didn't come here for everybody to look at him and say, wow, look at you. He came here with one purpose, and that's to die, and to die for sin. That's why he came. So when we think about it, Jesus set the greatest example of what it is to be a servant. He didn't come here to be served, which he could have been. I mean, he was the God of the universe, the creator. He could have demanded everyone serve him. Instead, he came and served everyone else. So I just tell you, when you think of it from this standpoint, serving aligns our heart with God. It aligns us with God's heart. It brings us in alignment. You know what happens? Anybody ever driven a car that's out of alignment? Oh my goodness. When I had my first car, that car was out of alignment more than it was in. Okay? And so, you kind of had to drive with the steering wheel this way just to go straight. Okay? And in West Virginia, that's quite a task. Okay, because there's no real straight roads there. Everything is curvy and up and down and all kinds of stuff. And so, when I was learning to drive, as a young guy, I can remember, and this car being out of alignment, and I don't know whether my dad thought that was great. It was unsafe, but it made me a better driver. Don't ask my wife about that. So anyway, I would tell you that you have to be in alignment. When an organization is out of alignment, and I heard this stated this week, that whenever there's a communication issue between people, it's not because of a communication problem, it's an alignment problem. It's because you're not in alignment with the person you're talking to, or you're not in alignment with that. And when you're trying to do this, and amidst all this division and everything that's gone on, there's one thing that should align us, is the fact that we have one person to serve here. Jesus Christ. We're not serving each other, not serving ourselves. We're serving Jesus. And when we serve Jesus, that brings us in alignment together, but it also brings us in alignment with what God is doing. And we experience Him so much more. That's why we emphasize serving and being a part of some ministry, not just connecting in a small group. Very important. I said it last week. Okay? That's important to do. But I got to tell you, when you actually do something where you have to depend on God, it aligns your heart with His. And it changes everything. It changes your perspective. I want to take you to 1 Corinthians 15. And listen to this, and this was just read, okay? Abby did a great job of reading this. Listen to this. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord. When we're thinking about how to live every day, and some people live in anticipation of Jesus returning, any day He could come back, all right? And we know we live in a world where there's plenty of those signs that happen in our culture, in our history, and in governments and in the world, all of this going on. Yeah, there are plenty of signs that point to the fact that Jesus could return. Sure. Here's the thing, though. We can't just sit around gazing at the air saying, okay, we're ready. Because He's given us a job to do up until that point, and this is it. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. If you serve, it is not useless. It is worth it. Every time you do something for Jesus and you do it with the right heart motivation, you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for Him. Can I just tell you, it changes everything. Serving uses us to make a difference. It pulls us together and it brings us to a point to where we can make a difference. We can do so much more together. We do so much more together. Quite honestly, it was never meant to be where somebody does something and they get all the attention for it. Okay? We love to appreciate our volunteers. Matter of fact, I want to just do a shout out right now. If you're serving in this church already, you are over next door with kids or students on Sunday nights. If you're a part of any of the greeting teams out there, anybody that's back there in the booth right now, thank you for letting everybody hear me and see me. Thank you for running cameras, making sure that the people that are still not here yet or who are connecting with us from all over the place. I don't know whether you realize how many people are connecting with us all over our country and all over the world watching our services. I don't know what it is. It can't be me, all right? It has to be something that God is doing in their lives. And I'll just tell you, when I look at this and I think about what God is doing and how it's all coming together and how many people it takes, I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you. Thank you, band. Cricket. Thank you, vocalists and people who sing. Thank you to who cleans this building. Did you know somebody came in here and sat all these chairs up? I mean, think about it. All this stuff, all of these things happen. Every Sunday morning, it takes at least 75 to 80 people per service to actually do the things that are going on. And that's just to get by. If we had more, it would be incredible what we could do. Kids would get unbelievable attention. Sometimes we miss out on some of the greatest blessings of watching God do things because we cancel ourselves out of being able to be involved. For one reason or another, we don't think we can do it. But I'll just tell you this, vision is never realized by one person, but by many who contribute. That's how vision is realized. So together we can make friends while making a difference. And I think it's incredible to think of that. Verse that I want to just share here as I kind of bring this to a conclusion. Colossians chapter 3. And this one is one I shared with a lot of people already. And I shared at our appreciation event we did back in early August. But listen to this. And this is everybody here. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord. Not for human masters. That's huge. Not working for people. Okay? Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. God already has planned to reward us for the things we do for Him. But this is what's great. You're not serving people. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Anytime we step into a role of giving of ourselves, and can I say this? Not looking for the minimal opportunity, but looking for everything we can do. What can I do? The older I get, the more I realize there's only so much left. There's only so much left. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I got to get on the stick. If I'm going to actually get something accomplished for God, I got to get moving here. It's kind of like trying to make sure you're ready for retirement. You're saving up enough money. Have you done enough to be able to retire at the age you want to? You know something? I'm beginning to think that retirement is kind of silly. And I'm kind of beginning to think, whether I always do this position or this job, I don't ever want to just give up on serving the Lord Christ. I want to make sure that the sponge that you would call my life is getting wrung out, that there's nothing left in it. I would hope that you're thinking to yourself, there are so many things, and quite honestly, during COVID, boy, did we ever get things offered to us to distract us? Distract us from actually hearing the truth and knowing Jesus and being close to Him, things that have replaced who He is in our lives. Why would we do that when we have connection and things that we could be a part of? I bring it down to this. There will always be a need for volunteers in the church. We will always have a need for volunteers. The more our church grows, the more people that continue to attend, the more kids that are in that building next door, the more cars that are parked out in the parking lot, the bigger that we have a representation of our community, all of this, there will always be need for volunteers. But I want you to hear this. It should never be about filling a position. Yeah, there have been days where I could have stood up here before church service and said, you know what? There's nobody working in the nursery, and it's all y'all's fault. And I need you to get up out of that seat and go and sit in the nursery and hold a baby. Okay? I could do that. I could try to guilt trip you into doing that. Quite honestly, I was part of a church service where that happened once. And I remember everybody's reaction. Who's going to go? He's going to be mad if we don't go. See, it really comes down to, listen, there will always be opportunities. There will always be volunteers needed in the church. But really comes down to, it's not just about filling a position. The church serves because of who we serve. See, really, this isn't about whether or not we get enough people to serve in certain positions and we check off the boxes. The staff's relieved. Oh, thank goodness we have enough people this weekend. Yeah, there's a lot of stress about those things, but honestly, it's much more important that we see what God wants for you and not what we want from you. See, God wants you to grow in your faith, and the greatest way to do it is to give of yourself, to serve. So, let's do it great. What do you say? Let's do it great. Let's don't settle for just good enough. We have an opportunity that's coming our way. Two things that are going to be big. Number one is be rich. John mentioned it early in the service. Be Rich gives us an opportunity to go out into our community and find places that are in need of people serving. It's not really for our church. It's for them. It's for them. We go out and we help in a food pantry. We go and we help do things for the schools. Or we go out and we're looking at all kinds of options. But we go out and we give of ourselves. Why? Because that was Jesus' example. And it's Him that we're serving. So that's why we do that. You're going to hear more and more. Next week, we'll really unveil a lot of things about Be Rich and why Be Rich is so important and a vital part of our church. But then on top of that, Team Link is right around the corner. And I want to encourage you that before you leave today, that you sign up and come to Team Link. And even you might say, well, I'm already serving. Okay, great. Pour your heart into it. Thank you for doing it. But if you're still looking for that opportunity, I want to encourage you, come to Team Link and find a place that stretches you beyond where you've been serving before, perhaps. Maybe even before COVID, you were involved here in one thing, and now it's time, God may be saying, how about taking a step to do something a little more, where you got to really depend on me. Every one of the positions that we would need to fill in this church, I mean, it's right here in this room, but it's not about filling a position. Because if all we wanted to do was do that, then quite honestly, we should shut our doors as a church. There's no reason to have a goal of engaging people at a higher level. The greatest thing we can do is from our hearts serve the Lord Christ. He's done so much for us. So much. I got to tell you, I know in my life and watching this, when I see Jesus show up so many times, over and over again, proving himself to be who he is in my life. But it's when I'm doing it, not for myself, but for him. It's a good measure of whether I'm doing it for myself or not. You know, yesterday and this week, college football's back. Anybody like college football? Yeah, I love college football. I love what it does. I love to see thousands of people jumping and all kinds of stuff in the stands when their team is winning and scoring and all that. I love it when my team wins. My team won yesterday. It was fun to watch. Marshall. And so I love that. And I know a lot of you, you saw your team win or lose, but it was still fun to watch. But the teams always have chants, just like that one. Called out to me, we are, Marshall. You go to a game, they chant it back and forth and everything. And I thought to myself, what would our chant be? And our chant would be something to the effect, here for you. Here for you. It's a chant for the community to hear, a chant for our Lord to hear. So I want to encourage you, take that step. Take that step. Look for the place where God would use you. And keep pursuing. Keep pursuing. Because that's what's going to grow your faith.